$412 million. That is the nominal bill. Russia's military ran up in August in equipment lost across radar, electronic warfare, logistics, and aviation. Every open-source tracker counts the wreckage. Almost none of them count how long it actually takes to build the replacement. That gap is what this series exists to close. This is the ledger. Every month, Ground Truth audits confirmed equipment losses on both sides of this war and runs them against one question, applied the same way every time. Not what something costs to build, how long it actually takes to build again. A cheap system that rolls off an active production line in 6 weeks is a minor loss. An expensive one stuck behind a microchip embargo for 2 years is not. Dollar value is the headline. Replacement lead time is the story. By the end of this audit, that counter reaches $412 million in confirmed nominal losses. But the number that actually changes this war's math is measured in months and years, not dollars. Let's open the books. Section 2. High-value radars and electronic warfare systems. 3 high-value radar and electronic warfare systems entered this Windows ledger. All 3 sit in the tier that actually shifts this war's balance because none of them can be replaced quickly. Sticker price puts them well below the aviation losses later in this audit. Replacement lead time puts them near the top. On August 6th, near Tokmak on the Zaporizhzhia axis, a Zytel R-330 jamming and direction-finding complex was destroyed. Nominal replacement value, $22 million. The signal processing electronics inside the unit are the actual bottleneck here, well ahead of the truck chassis or the radio hardware. Systems like this depend on specialized signal processing components historically sourced through channels now restricted by sanctions. That pushes reconstruction into Tier 3. 12 to 24 months, not weeks. That estimate for the Zytel is actually the mild end of this section's range. The next 2 systems push further. Compare that to a towed artillery barrel or an armored personnel carrier. Those come off existing lines with unsanctioned parts and workers who don't need years of specialized training. Radar and electronic warfare systems don't work that way. Every stage, from chip sourcing to final calibration, runs through a bottleneck. On August 14th, near Jankoy in Crimea, a 96L6E acquisition and target designation radar, part of an S-400 battery, was destroyed. Nominal value, $38 million. This is where sticker price stops mattering. The arrays targeting electronics rely on low-volume, high-precision microchips. Russia's domestic semiconductor base cannot produce these at the required tolerances, and the pre-war import channel for them is largely closed. That puts a strategic-grade radar in Tier 4, effectively irreplaceable inside this war's time frame, not just expensive to rebuild. On August 21st, a Buk M3 fire control and launcher unit was destroyed on the Kherson axis. Nominal value, $40 million. The Buk M3's fire control electronics run on imported components that predate the current sanctions regime. Replacing this unit means building a new fire control brain, calibrated and tested on a production line that was never built to move fast, not just welding together a new chassis. That's Tier 3, same as the Zytel. None of these 3 systems come back online just because a new unit rolls off a line. Each one needs trained technicians to calibrate the array, tune the signal chain, and certify it against a live target set. That process alone can run additional months, stacked on top of the manufacturing weight. 3 systems. $100 million nominal. A combined rebuild timeline measured in years, not the 6-week turnaround of a mass-produced rifle or a towed gun barrel. This is the category carrying the ledger's real cost, the systems that took a decade to design and cannot be rebuilt on a wartime schedule. 3 logistics losses this window. None of them register as a headline dollar figure worth dwelling on. All 3 cost something more expensive than money. Time, and the tempo of everything that depends on that time. On August 3rd, a pontoon bridge section crossing the Dnipro near Oleshki was destroyed. The bridge itself is cheap to rebuild. The problem is what crossed it. Every convoy that used that span now reroutes, and rerouting on a contested river line means longer exposure to strike windows, not just a longer drive. Convoys that used to cross in minutes now travel a longer route, under longer observation, for as long as it takes engineers to lay a replacement span. That exposure window is the real cost here, far more than the bridge's price tag. This is Tier 1 hardware. Pontoon sections are commodity engineering equipment replaced from stock in weeks. The real lead time cost sits in the operational tempo lost everyday traffic sits rerouted, not in rebuilding the bridge itself. The next entry in this section runs on the same logic, but the cargo makes it worse. On August 11th, a fuel train was struck at a rail junction near Jankoy in Crimea. The tanker cars themselves are Tier 1 items, replaced from stock easily enough. The fuel that was on them and the schedule slot they occupied on a rail network already running close to capacity are the harder things to get back. A single rail junction serves multiple forward positions. Losing one fuel train doesn't just cost the fuel, it forces a rescheduling of every other movement queued behind it on that line. Fuel scheduled for one sector arrives late for another. That delay costs the next assault real resupply time that never appears in a nominal loss figure. On August 19th, a resupply convoy was struck along the Svatove to Kreminna Road on the Luhansk axis. The trucks and their cargo are replaceable within weeks. The corridor's exposure is not. Every truck that replaces them now travels the same road under the same coverage for as long as that stretch stays contested. Individually, a bridge section, a fuel train, and a convoy are minor entries. Together, inside the same reporting window, they compound. Rerouted crossings, delayed fuel, and an exposed supply corridor don't stack like a spreadsheet. They stack like traffic, and the stacking is what slows an offensive down. None of these three losses is expensive by the standards of the rest of this ledger. That's the point of including them. A war doesn't run on sticker price. It runs on whether fuel, shells, and replacement crews arrive on schedule, and every rerouted convoy is a schedule slipping. Section 4. High-cost aviation and human capital. 4 aircraft losses this window. This is where the ledger's human capital argument matters as much as the hardware does. On August 8th, a Su-34 fighter-bomber was shot down on the Zaporizhzhia front. Both crew members were killed. Nominal airframe value, $50 million. That number is not the loss that matters most here. A Su-34 crew represents years of flight training. Most air forces would call elite. Russia can eventually build another airframe. It cannot fast-track another qualified strike crew through a compressed pipeline without cutting corners on the training that keeps them alive. That is a Tier 4 loss, and no factory fixes it. That pipeline runs through basic flight training, advanced jet conversion, and finally certification on the specific combat type. Skip a stage to backfill losses faster, and the next crew that goes down does so with less margin for error. On August 15th, an Su-25 attack aircraft was shot down over the Toretsk sector on the Donetsk axis. The pilot ejected. Status beyond that is unconfirmed. Nominal value, $11 million. The airframe sits on an active, if constrained, production and overhaul line, which keeps it at Tier 2. The pilot, if he survived, is the actual asset worth tracking. If he didn't, the math shifts straight back into Tier 4. On August 27th, a Ka-52 attack helicopter was shot down in the Robotyne sector. Crew status is unconfirmed. Nominal value, $16 million. The Ka-52's targeting and countermeasure suite depends on components that aren't simple stock parts. That places the airframe in Tier 3. But if the crew didn't survive, add years to that timeline for the human half of the loss. On August 17th, an Mi-8 or Mi-17 transport helicopter was destroyed on the ground during a strike on an airbase in Crimea. No crew was aboard. Nominal value, $14 million. Tier 2. This one is a hardware loss, cleanly, without the human capital weight attached to the other three. $91 million in airframes this window. That figure will always be the headline number, and it will always be the wrong one to fixate on. A pilot's training pipeline runs 3 to 5 years or longer before that pilot is trusted with a strike mission. Lose the pilot, and the airframe was never the expensive part. 2 of this window's 4 crews are confirmed dead. 2 more are unconfirmed. Even in the best case, that is years of training removed from the order of battle in a single reporting window. Section 5. Ukraine's debit column. The same audit, applied without adjustment to Ukraine's side of the ledger. 4 confirmed losses this window. On August 5th, 3 T-64 BV tanks were destroyed on the Kupiansk axis. These are Soviet legacy hulls pulled from refurbished depot stock, putting them at Tier 1 to Tier 2. The dwindling size of that depot stock is the actual constraint, not the steal, and depot conversions like this one are getting harder to source with every month this war continues. Western-supplied armor in this window has a different problem entirely. On August 18th, a Leopard 2A4 was destroyed on the Toretsk sector. Replacing it doesn't mean building a new one. It means waiting on an allocation from an allied nation's existing stock, competing with every other unit on that same list. Tier 3. Delivery on a fresh allocation, once a decision is actually made, has historically run months, not weeks. On August 12th, 2 Caesar self-propelled howitzers were damaged or destroyed on the Kherson axis. The production line exists in France and is active. It's also backed up with export orders from other buyers. Tier 2 to Tier 3, depending on where Ukraine sits in that queue. On August 24th, a component of an Iris TSLM air defense fire unit was damaged on the Kharkiv axis. German production of this system runs at low volume against a multi-year order backlog shared with other NATO buyers. That's a Tier 4 loss, driven entirely by queue position. The system itself is straightforward enough to rebuild. The wait for a production slot is measured in years, and that wait is the part that actually matters. 4 losses. A tier range from weeks to years, the same range Russia's side produced. The mechanism differs. Depot stock running low on one end, and Allied production queue on the other. The consequence for combat readiness does not. Same rubric, same rigor, no softer treatment for either side of this war. Ukraine's constraint is a waiting list inside Allied production capacity that Kyiv doesn't control, a different bottleneck entirely from Russia's chip embargo, driven by different politics, landing in the same tier of consequence. $412 million. That's August's nominal bill. 3 radar and electronic warfare systems, 3 logistics choke points, and 4 aircraft, audited against the same lead time standard applied to Ukraine's 4 confirmed losses in the same window. The dollar figure sits mostly in radar, electronic warfare, and aircraft. The real damage sits there too, but deeper than the price tag. A $91 million airframe total is a rounding error next to a lost strike crew that took years to train and can't be replaced by any factory at any price. 10 confirmed losses on Russia's side this window, 4 on Ukraine's. That gap reflects tracking visibility, not battlefield performance. This audit only counts what open-source investigators can verify, and one side's equipment losses are currently easier to verify than the others. Add this month to the running total, and the cumulative ledger stands at $4,282 million in confirmed nominal losses tracked since this audit began. The lead time weighted picture behind that number gets heavier. Every month a Tier 3 or Tier 4 system goes in the ground. The dollar line and the lead time line used to move together. They don't anymore. Every month, more of this ledger's value sits in Tier 3 and Tier 4 systems, and the widening gap between those two lines is the actual story of how this war's attrition math is shifting. Next month, this audit is tracking one specific line. Whether the radar and electronic warfare systems lost this window get replaced from existing stock, or from a production run still waiting on components bottlenecked by sanctions. That answer changes the tier. We'll have it on the books next month. If you want next month's audit the day it posts, subscribe. That's the one thing that gets you the next ledger before anyone else sees it.